My name's Catherine Dauvergne, and I work at the Allard School of Law at the University of British Columbia. And I've been working on questions of immigration and refugee law for almost a quarter of a century now. The book is really about a change in the way Western liberal democracies approach immigration. And I think my main impetus in writing it is that I don't think that immigration policymakers and decision makers and advocates actually have paid enough attention to the way the foundations of our political and public discourses about immigration have really profoundly shifted. So we have a comfortable mythology of how immigration fits into the story of a country like Canada, but we've left that behind in terms of the way we actually regulate migration. Not just a few years ago, but probably since the beginning of the 21st century. And we are not doing enough to actually grapple with the difference that those changes make. Mm. Frustration. um, I think it's really a process of time. I started working in this area in the 1990s, and in the 1990s, there were a number of different advocacy issues that scholars and lawyers and migrant activists were working on. And in fact, I think since that time, we've lost ground rather than gained ground. And I think more than anything else, there is a terrible frustration with the number of policy alternatives that come up, so that even when you're with a group of policymakers or activists for that matter, trying to suggest new directions for the future, they're all things that have been tried before, and in many cases, things that have failed before. And so I am very frustrated by that and wanted to make a contribution to explaining why we are stuck in this loop, in the hopes that that will help us figure out how to get out of it. I think, that, in fact, that's, if anything, that's the part of the book that I feel, somebody said this to me last night at dinner, you really should go and write that book, which is just all about the future and is not very, this one's all scholarly and grounded in research and has tons of footnotes and is really about things that are already happening. And to break away from that and look to the future really requires us to tell completely different stories about what it is that we want immigrants to do when they come to a country like Canada, to think about, rather than our frustration with the fact that doctors are driving taxi cabs or um, that people have poorer labor market performance than they used to in the past, to really think about um, why it is that we open our doors to newcomers to Canada, what it is that we're hoping. So, for example, it's very unrealistic to require that people have quite a lot of money before they come to Canada and then expect that they will not make choices that are associated with privilege, right? We need to think about, if you invite people who have a lot of money to come to Canada, then you need to expect that they will use their economic power, which is the basis on which we're selecting them, to live in enclaves, to travel around the world, to become only partially attached to Canada. And we need to think about whether we're going to be happy and accepting of that model of an immigrant. Um, and rather than frustrated that immigrants seem to come for just a few months of the year, they seem to, make large investments in, this is one example, make large investments in big houses in Vancouver, but then not actually live in them, or come to Vancouver or come to Toronto and put their kids in school, but continue earning their living in another country. Um, we're creating a migration system that prioritizes exactly those people. So we need to find a way of either changing the system or valuing the new immigrants that we're inviting. We can't invite and accept only these people and expect them to run corner stores and dry cleaning businesses and devote all of their time and energies to learning English or French and really becoming Canadian in the way of earlier waves of migrants. So uh, it really is a pretty profound reimagining in order to do one of two things. Maybe just align our stories with the people we're actually inviting, or look at the news stories and think, wow, we really don't like these stories, and consequently change our legal frameworks. So the way that current migration stories are just completely flattened out into an economic discourse only is not is not working for either advocates or policymakers. So just taking the rights point and leaving the economics to the side for a moment, um, we have decades of experience with how weak rights arguments actually are when we talk about the rights of non-citizens, the rights of migrants. And if anything, those rights claims are eroding under current immigration law structures. And when if we look at moments where there seems to be something different that happens, something optimistic, something unpredictable, something really positive for migrant outcomes, it tends to be when we move away from a discourse that focuses on rights, and when we instead focus on those common bonds of humanity that make us think about people differently. I think that this is, I mean, that we see this even in a simple example like the Trump regime's reversal around separating children from their parents at the southern border of the United States. All of the talk coming out of that is about how it's just inhumane to do this to people, and how really nobody likes to see families separated in that way, and how palpable the images of harm were to the children. There's no question that the American government has the right, has the legal capacity and the legal tools to take those actions. And well, two things about making a human rights argument in that space is first of all, it's pretty weak to start with, and secondly, winning a human rights argument like that takes months and months and years, um, and may not actually. The separation part of that argument may not be winnable, though the what happens to the children in the interim part of that argument probably is winnable, but the basic separation argument probably isn't winnable. And so thinking about those unpredictable moments and trying to, I guess, reverse engineer them. What is it that makes unexpectedly positive things happen? It tends to be an appeal to something other than rights or economics. The symposium has just been a fantastic opportunity for me. It's really a wonderful pleasure and a privilege to spend time talking with people who have taken up the ideas in the book and worked so seriously on them. And whether they've embraced pieces and developed them, or they're highly critical of pieces and feel like that part of the argument isn't working, it's just first of all incredibly flattering, but also just beautifully intellectually challenging. And that's the great pleasure of working as a scholar, is that you have these moments. So this has just been great for me.